Atlanta thought it had seen scandals before, but nothing could prepare the city for the storm that followed the death of T. Hood. This wasn't just another headline. This wasn't just another crime in the news. This was betrayal. This was money. This was lies, and somehow it all circled back to the world of love and hip-hop Atlanta. From the very beginning, the family of T. Hood wanted the world to believe their son was an innocent victim of a vicious setup. They wanted fans to see a young man wrongfully taken, a community shattered, and a family desperate for justice. They launched hashtags, they launched a GoFundMe. They told anyone who would listen that this was bigger than the streets, but the cracks in their story, they were loud enough to shatter glass, because the deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't a setup at all, it was self-defense. And the truth points straight back to T. Hood himself. Think about it, the family painted T. Hood as a saint. But police reports, autopsy details, and witness statements tell a completely different story. Neighbors claimed they heard Kelsey Frost screaming for help that night. They said they saw the rage of T. Hood, fists flying, chaos unfolding. They described terror, not innocence. And when Kai Frost, son of Kirk Frost and Rasheeda Frost, walked into his own home after work, he didn't walk into peace. He walked into war. He found Kelsey Frost fighting for her safety, a man towering over her, a weapon in his hand. Now pause. If you were Kai Frost, what would you do? Would you step back and watch the woman you love be torn apart? Or would you fight to protect her, to protect your home, to protect yourself? Police say Kai Frost fought back, and the result was the death of T. Hood. But here's where this tragedy becomes scandal, because instead of accepting the truth, instead of facing the possibility that T. Hood was the aggressor, the family doubled down. They told the world their son was ambushed. They told the world this was a setup tied to love and hip-hop Atlanta stars. They told the world they needed money to fight for justice, and that's when the GoFundMe went live. A link shared across social media, wrapped in tears and hashtags, asking fans to open their hearts and their wallets. But fans aren't fools. At first, sympathy poured in, some donated, some shared, but then the questions began. How could this be a setup if neighbors confirmed they heard Kelsey Frost screaming for her life? How could this be a cover-up if the police themselves ruled it possible self-defense? And why was the family ignoring the violent history of T. Hood? A history whispered about in Atlanta for years. A history filled with allegations of domestic violence and abuse against women? This is where the story turned. Bloggers started digging, court records surfaced, reports of T. Hood facing accusations of abuse became public. The whispers became receipts. And suddenly, that GoFundMe didn't look like a fight for justice, it looked like a scam. It looked like a desperate attempt to raise money before fans could discover the truth. And the truth is cold, the truth is brutal, the truth says T. Hood wasn't just a victim, he was an aggressor. Now imagine you're a fan. You see the family of T. Hood crying, begging, telling you to donate because their son was taken too soon. You give, you share. And then you find out that same family allegedly knew about his violent past. You find out detectives had already told them what witnesses said. You find out police showed them evidence of what really happened that night. And despite knowing all of this, they still went online, pointed fingers at Kai Frost, dragged the Frost family's name through the mud, and painted themselves as victims. How would you feel? Betrayed, cheated, angry? Because that's exactly how the fans are feeling. The Frost family, Kirk Frost, Rasheeda Frost, Kai Frost, and even Kelsey Frost, have been dragged into a storm they didn't start. And yet the narrative pushed by the family of T. Hood made it sound like the Frosts were the villains, when in reality, the evidence is on their side. Witnesses backed them up, police backed them up, the autopsy backed them up, but the family ignored all of it and pushed their GoFundMe anyway. When the family of T. Hood went public, they swore he had been set up, they swore Kai Frost was guilty, they swore the Frost name, Kirk Frost, Rasheeda Frost, and even Kelsey Frost, was tied to a conspiracy to cover up the truth. But the leaked texts told a different story. Screenshots surfaced where Kelsey Frost allegedly told friends and relatives that she had begged for help before, that she was exhausted by the cycle, that she couldn't understand why nobody was protecting her from T. Hood's rage. One text allegedly read, "Y'all never help me when it comes to this DV." Imagine reading that as a fan. Imagine realizing the same family now painting T. Hood as a saint had already been told directly by the woman he was hurting that she was suffering, crying out for help, and they turned away. It's not just heartbreaking, it's enraging, because it exposes a choice. The T. Hood family could have faced the truth. They could have admitted their son's faults. They could have chosen silence, but instead, they chose spin, they chose erasure, they chose to point fingers at the Frosts while running a fundraiser on the backs of fans who thought they were donating to justice. Think about how that feels. If you gave $20, $50, even $5 to the GoFundMe, believing you were standing against corruption, believing you were fighting for truth. How would you feel finding out the family had already seen those texts? That they'd already heard Kelsey Frost's screams? That they'd been told directly that T. Hood was violent, and still looked the world in the eye and said he was innocent? This was a setup. Would you feel betrayed? Would you feel scammed? Or would you feel trapped in a lie you never agreed to be part of? The contradictions only grow louder. Police reports reveal something chilling when Kai Frost arrived home. The altercation had already started. He wasn't hunting. He wasn't setting anyone up. He was coming home like any young man after a long day. Imagine opening your front door and seeing Kelsey Frost fighting for her life, screaming, clawing for escape, while T. Hood stood over her with a weapon in hand. That's what the police say Kai Frost walked into, and yet the family ignored this detail completely. They told the world Kai Frost was guilty when in reality, the reports suggest he may have saved Kelsey Frost's life. But maybe the most damning detail isn't the police report or the texts. It's the silence, because even after the evidence began to surface, the T. Hood family didn't back down. They didn't say, "We were wrong." They didn't say, "We didn't know." Instead, they kept the GoFundMe live. They kept sharing the link. They kept asking for donations, even while whispers of a scam grew louder every day. That silence wasn't grief. That silence was strategy, and the irony? The very past the T. Hood family wants erased is now being dragged into the light. Records of domestic violence, whispers of abuse, arrests, charges, receipts. Meanwhile, the Frost family, usually caught in their own reality TV scandals, are suddenly positioned as the ones telling the truth. Fans who once doubted Kirk Frost and Rasheeda Frost are now seeing them differently, because this time, the evidence doesn't work against the Frosts. It works for them. Ask yourself, why would neighbors lie? Why would texts emerge that match witness statements? Why would police so quickly label this a possible case of self-defense? If the evidence pointed elsewhere, and if Kai Frost truly acted in defense of Kelsey Frost, then what does that make the GoFundMe? What does that make the campaign pushed by the T. Hood family? Because when you knowingly twist facts to squeeze money out of the public, there's only one word that fits: scam. It's scam. And yet, it cuts deeper. Some reports even allege T. Hood's mother had lived through abuse herself. If true, it explains her blind spots. It explains the excuses. It explains the choice to cover instead of confront. Trauma doesn't just break people, it traps them. But cycles don't excuse lies. Cycles don't excuse blaming the Frost family. Cycles don't excuse scamming fans. The fans are divided. Some defend the family, saying grief makes people desperate. Others are furious, saying they were manipulated, saying the family knew, saying this was never about justice. The battle is everywhere. The streets of Atlanta, blogs, timelines, comment sections. Some still blame the Frosts. Others expose the T. Hood family. Many are simply stunned that tragedy turned into a tug-of-war for truth and cash. And this isn't over. Bloggers promise more. They say receipts are coming. They say documents exist. One even claims the exact police files prove T. Hood carried a weapon that night, proof that would dismantle the family's innocence narrative once and for all. If those documents drop, the GoFundMe won't just stall, it will collapse. And the family's credibility will collapse with it. So where are we now? With a family accused of lies, with a fundraiser stuck in limbo, with fans divided, and with the Frost family, Kai Frost, Kelsey Frost, Rasheeda Frost, and Kirk Frost standing not as villains but as survivors. The same people dragged into the scandal are now shielded by evidence. And the man his family defended is being remembered not as a saint, but as an abuser whose past finally caught up to him. But what do you believe? Do you believe the family crying corruption, or the receipts screaming self-defense? Do you believe the GoFundMe, or the witnesses who swear Kelsey Frost screamed for her life? Do you believe the words or the evidence? Because this isn't just about one man's death. This is about how far a family will go to control the narrative, to protect their image, to secure money under the veil of grief. It's about fans waking up to the possibility they were played. It's about truth clawing its way out, no matter how many lies bury it. And here's the question hanging in Atlanta tonight: how long can the T. Hood family keep this story alive before the truth buries it? Because the evidence isn't going away. The fans aren't forgetting, and the receipts, they're still coming. Stay ready. Because in part 3, the lid blows off completely. The documents, the police records, the leaked screenshots. Once they surface, there will be nowhere left for lies to hide. Fans had been waiting, scrolling, refreshing blogs, searching for the truth, and when it finally hit, it was undeniable. The official autopsy confirmed what whispers had been saying. All along, T. Hood had been shot multiple times, including in the back. But the context was everything. The positioning of the wounds matched a violent struggle. They matched a man who was moving. A man who was fighting, a man who wasn't a helpless victim but someone locked in confrontation. And when detectives paired those autopsy results with neighbor statements, the narrative of self-defense became stronger than ever. Imagine sitting in the Frost household as this unfolded. Imagine being Kai Frost, already vilified online, watching the world call you a killer while knowing you walked into chaos and had no choice. Imagine being Kelsey Frost, reliving your screams, knowing you begged for help that night, only to see the same family who ignored you call you a liar in public. Imagine being Rasheeda Frost and Kirk Frost, watching your family's name dragged through the mud, blogs using your faces to sell a story you know isn't true, all while a GoFundMe someone else's name raised money by branding you as villains. Then, the leaked police summaries hit the internet like a hammer. They showed witness accounts were consistent. Kelsey Frost was under attack, T Hood had a weapon, and Kai Frost stepped into a scene where lives were already in danger. That was the chain of events, not an ambush, not a setup, not a conspiracy. The family's story had no ground left to stand on. And yet, even as those receipts burned through social media, the T Hood family stayed silent on the lies they had spread. The GoFundMe still active. The accusations still circulating. The silence louder than any confession. By now, fans had turned. The comment sections under every post were no longer sympathy, they were rage. People wanted refunds. People wanted accountability. You lied to us, some wrote. You knew the truth and you took our money anyway, others added. The anger wasn't just at T Hood for his alleged violence. It was at the T Hood family for turning tragedy into profit. For making fans feel like fools, and once fans feel betrayed, there's no going back. That's the end of trust. That's the end of credibility. Bloggers doubled down too. They unearthed arrest records. They shared screenshots. They pieced together a history that painted T Hood as someone with a pattern of hurting women. And when fans saw that, when they saw the very receipts the family pretended didn't exist, it was over. The narrative of setup was dead. The narrative of justice fundraiser was dead. The only story left standing was one of violence, lies, and a family desperate to cash in before the truth surfaced. But here's the haunting part. The family didn't just destroy themselves. They dragged others into it. They dragged Kai Frost, who will forever carry the weight of taking a life, even if it was in defense. They dragged Kelsey Frost, whose trauma is now public property for strangers to debate. They dragged Rasheeda Frost and Kirk Frost, who already carried reality TV baggage, but never expected to be framed as conspirators in a life or death case. And for what? For money that barely came close to what they wanted? For sympathy that vanished the second receipts hit the timeline. It's one thing to grieve. It's another thing to scam, and that's what fans are calling it now, a scam. The word is everywhere. The T Hood family scammed us. The T Hood family lied. The T Hood family exposed. That GoFundMe, once a symbol of sympathy, has become a monument of deception. And every dollar sitting in that account feels like stolen trust. Yet, beneath all the noise, the emotional aftermath is brutal. Kelsey Frost still lives with the scars of that night. Kai Frost still carries the weight of taking a life. Rasheeda Frost and Kirk Frost still watch their family's name tied to a scandal they never created. And the T Hood family, they're still clinging to a story the world no longer believes. In doing so, they haven't just lost the case, they've lost credibility. So what does this all mean? It means the truth won, the evidence stood tall, the lies crumbled, and the fans, the ones who gave their money, their voices, their sympathy, finally saw the game for what it was. This was never about justice. This was about money. This was about a family trying to bury their son's violent past by projecting it onto someone else. But lies don't last forever. Lies collapse under the weight of truth. And that's exactly what happened here. The name T Hood will now forever be tied not just to music, not just to death, but to scandal, to the GoFundMe scam, to the lies told on reality TV stars, to the receipts that exposed it all. And the Frost family, Kai Frost, Kelsey Frost, Rasheeda Frost, and Kirk Frost, will forever carry the scars of being dragged into something they didn't start. This is the cost of lies. This is the price of trying to outplay the truth. So ask yourself, if you were one of the fans who donated, how do you feel knowing the story you supported was built on lies? If you were one of the Frosts, how would you rebuild after being dragged through a storm that wasn't yours? And if you were part of the T Hood family, could you look in the mirror knowing you pointed fingers, lied to the public, and tried to turn grief into profit? Because in the end, scandals fade, but truth always stays. And in this case, the truth has spoken loud and clear. The T Hood family ran a scam. The fans saw through it. And the Frost family walked away not as villains, but as survivors.